Hello my friends, and welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. In this one, I'll be starting off my look into weapon builds that you can set up using level 3 traders and the flea market now that we've unlocked it for the .16 wipe. Honestly, I have to say that some subtle changes to what the level 3 traders sell has really made the builds at this level a lot more varied than usual, which I love to see. And I've got a couple videos worth of builds to cover for this trader level, so that's actually kind of exciting. Ammo availability is also pretty good right now, so you can run a lot of different calibers once you hit level 3 traders. You can buy reasonable ammo from level 3 traders, pretty much every caliber has good ammo spawning in raid, and the flea market is open for stuff like 545 BT ammo as well. While you technically can buy a lot of the best in slot parts for your weapons off the market, these builds are going to try and use stuff from the traders as much as possible just to avoid gambling on the flea market price. However, as usual, most good suppressors and a lot of good scopes are best bought through the flea market. Alright, so to start this video off, I want to take a look at the RFB, and how one simple new part for this thing turned it from a budget build that you only used because nothing else was available, to a legitimate contender for the best budget 308 build. The RFB has been in Tarkov for a while now, and it's kind of bounced back and forth between being useless and being the best budget build in the mid-game. Right now, BCP FMJ is the best 308 ammo that you can buy at level 3 traders, so you do have access to okay ammo, but you'll have to either loot better ammo or use ref to trade GP coins for M80 if you want to guarantee headshots through those helmets. For most of Tarkov's history, the RFB was really limited by not being able to attach a tactical device onto your build, which might sound like a small thing, but losing fights because you can't see down a dark hallway or you don't have the hipfire bonus from a laser always feels bad. In this patch, we finally got a new attachment to add some extra rail space on the RFB, so now you can run a full build with a flashlight, laser, or IR spotlight. So now the RFB can honestly compete with other builds and not just be the poor man's SR25, though it still kind of is. To start this build off, you can buy the RFB from Skier or off the flea market, or to get one for really cheap, you can just do a barter trade from Skier for 2 gas analyzers, which lets you pick up an RFB for like 30k rubles. The new part for this thing is the RFB quad rail 3-inch mount, which is sold by Skier level 2 and gives you rails on both sides and on the bottom for flashlights and lasers. I just add an X400 flashlight onto this rail and a Magpul RVG foregrip onto the handguard rail to give the build some extra ergonomics. For the suppressor on this build, first you need to add the RFB thread spacer, and then on my 7.62 builds in the mid game, I personally like to use the Thunderbeast Ultra 5 suppressor, which can be used on 5.56 or 7.62 builds. It's usually quite cheap on the market compared to some other options, and it's a bit lighter than other suppressors, so it doesn't hurt the aiming speed as much. Plus, I think on the RFB, this shorter suppressor just looks pretty cool, so it gets extra fashion points. Next, to finish the build off, I usually like to use the Elcan Spectre 1-4 scope from Peacekeeper. I don't know any other scope that gets you as much utility for under $300, but if you don't like this one, the flea market is wide open to buy whatever you want. Overall, the RFB will never outpace a fully built SR25 or a G28, but I think for a simple build like this, you absolutely get your money's worth, and it's a great build for budget lighthouse rogue farming. Alright, so next up for this video, let's take a look at a 5.56 build on the G36 using some new parts that were added in the previous wipe. I think that all of the 5.56 rifles have pretty great builds at this trader level, so I plan on covering basically all of them. But for this video, I picked the G36 as the 5.56 build because I just think the new parts are both really cool and actually really great for the build. Previously, the only G36 that had any good builds for it was the G36C. But now we have railed handguards for every barrel length, so it's all back on the menu. While the G36 doesn't come close to the ergonomics of an M4, it actually has pretty solid recoil stats and a better fire rate than the AUG, MDR, or SCAR. So I think it actually has a pretty relevant place as a solid mid-range 5.56 build with pretty decent recoil. To start this build off, I like to buy the G36E2 variant from Peacekeeper level 3, which gives you a full-length barrel and a sight rail on the gun. For the suppressor on this build, I like to keep it simple and use the KAC QDC 5.56 flash hider with the NT4 suppressor off the flea market, since it has good recoil stats and is usually 30k rubles or less. For the handguard on this build, we've got the G36K KAC quad rail handguard, which can fit onto any barrel length of the G36 and gives you some extra recoil reduction and ergonomics. Next, I just add on a Magpul RVG grip and some kind of flashlight or laser. I would also recommend buying the G36 NATO magwell so that you can just use regular M4 magazines. This lets you use 60 rounders that you find or pick up M4 mags from other players and use those if you run out of ammo. For the stock on the G36 at level 3 traders, you have a couple of good options. First, you can keep it simple and save some rubles and just add on the G36 IDZ stock. At max level traders, this thing gets butt pad attachments to make it the best pick overall, but at level 3 traders, you have to run it as is. If you want to squeeze out just a little more recoil control though, you can add on the G36 buffer tube adapter and then the Chris DS150 stock. It's not a huge upgrade, but it does get you slightly better recoil stats. After that, all that's left is a sight, and once again, my recommendation is the Elcan Spectre 1-4 scope from Peacekeeper, as pretty much the best scope that you can buy from the traders at this level. Next up for this video, let's take a look at my favorite AK setup at level 3 traders, which should work on any full-sized AK in Tarkov except the AK-12. We've all used the AK, we've all built the AK, so I'm not going to ramble on about the pros and cons of the AK here. What I will say though is that it's never been easier to find good ammo for these things in raid, so you should have no problem loading these things up with good rounds. I'll also say that for some reason, the 7.62 AKs specifically feel really nice to me right now. 7.62 PS ammo being sold from the traders at a cheap price helps out with this for sure, and I've been mixing it with packs of PP ammo that I find in raid, and it's felt really good. So for that reason, I'm using the AK-103 sold by Proper as the base for this build. But as you should probably know, you can set this exact build up on an AK-74M as well if you want to run 5.45 instead. So first up, one of the best budget attachments in all of Tarkov is this JMac RRD-4C compensator, which fits onto every single one of the AK-100 rifles as well as the AK-74 rifles, and actually comes close to being the best part for recoil. If you prefer to run suppressed, which most people do, for the 7.62 AKs I recommend the PBS-1 suppressor for the recoil control, and for the 5.45 AKs I recommend the Hexagon AK-74 suppressor because of the lower ergonomics penalty. For the handguard on this build, I like to run my AKs with the Trax 1 handguard, the Trax bridge rail, and the Trax 2 handguard extension. At level 4 traders, there is a slightly better option available using the Zenitco parts, but until then, I do believe that this handguard setup plus the Bastion dust cover for the extra recoil reduction gets you the best possible recoil stats right from the traders. Next, I add on some CASV rails, and then for this build, I'm using the Osavets P3 foregrip and an X400 flashlight. You can also add a bipod onto this handguard if you want, and honestly, it really does help with full auto recoil on the 7.62 AKs quite a bit. For the stock, on this build, I'm running the Zenit PT3 Classica stock, which is actually surprisingly cheap on the flea market this way because it spawns on scavs a lot more than it used to. Then I just add the Bastion dust cover and an optic like the Elcan Spectre 1-4 scope, and then finally I also add on the Tango Down battle grip, and it's pretty much good to go. You can also use the RP1 charging handle as well for +1 ergonomics, just to kind of add a finishing touch to the build. For the final builds in this video, I just want to quickly go over two SMGs that I think fill the exact same role, the SR2M and the MP7. First up, the SR2M. This I would call the budget MP7. The recoil isn't quite as good, the ammo isn't quite as good, and it doesn't have 40 round mags. But everything is available from traders for a good price, and it's a really solid SMG build for run and gun raids. You can buy the gun, mags, suppressor, and 7U4 ammo from Proper level 3, making it really cost efficient to run this setup, and it does high damage with pretty decent armor pen, so it's a great SMG build overall. Really all you need to do with the SR2M is add on the suppressor, a flashlight, or laser of some kind, and then the B17 sight mount to attach a red dot sight. It's a really simple build, the whole thing is under 100k rubles usually, and it works great for any map that has a lot of close range fights. The MP7 on the other hand checks a lot of the same boxes as the SR2M, but it trades out the higher base damage for better armor pen on the ammo for the most part, and while it also has a really simple build, it is about double the price of the SR2M. Overall, I find the MP7 to be a bit better at slightly longer ranges and a bit more reliable at hitting one-shot headshots compared to the SR2M. But I think overall they feel very similar and you can kind of use them interchangeably. You can buy the MP7A1 from Peacekeeper for about 500 bucks, or check the flea market for it as well, but usually I find it's about the same price there since it's a highly sought after weapon. Just like the SR2M, the build is incredibly simple, but at level 3 traders you will need to buy the suppressor off the flea market for about 60,000 rubles or maybe a little bit more. Next you just add on a flashlight or a laser and whatever red dot sight you prefer. If you want to really min-max, you can swap out the iron sights for +2 ergonomics, but that's definitely optional. Then you just buy JSP SX ammo from Mechanic and you've got yourself a pretty good build. And that covers it for the first look at some weapons from level 3 traders. I've got more of these cooking in the background because honestly you can buy and build a ton of stuff at level 3 traders right now. So I do plan on releasing probably 2 more videos covering builds at this level. I hope you found this helpful and let me know what you think of the builds. Plus tell me about your favorite setups at this level down in the comments. Maybe I'll take the inspiration into part 2 of this little build series. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got a link to my Twitch channel in the description if you want to come say hi. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City, everyone.